There was a time when the Final Fantasy franchise was revered by all. People enjoyed it either because they loved the then niche Japanese RPG genre, or they adored the storytelling bits that influenced the way video game stories are told. Or maybe just both. But what are the things that drive us to like these games with their fancy backstories and androgynous characters? Join us now as we celebrate Final Fantasy's 25th anniversary and find out the many themes and tropes of the series, as well as find out why we like them so much. As soon as you put in the cartridge or CD, you're whisked into a world where crystal-fueled magic rules and summoning giant deities for quick flash attacks are commonplace. Or is it a world where a bucket load of airships and flying castles are common modes of transportation? Well, it's both. We've got examples such as the world of balance/ruin of FF6, Midgar from FF7, Alexandria and Limblum from FF9, and way too many more. Regardless of which aspect came first, there is always a scenario where rulers or oppressors aren't too happy with what they've got and search for lost power, only to have it bite them in the proverbial ass, thus having the heroes clean up the mess. Other cues include forces of nature trying to turn things the way it was, like that whole bit with FF7 with the ancients in Genova, plus that bit where Ares called down the giant meteor to end the world just before getting stabbed in the back. Oh yeah, spoiler alert. Anywho, the melding between sorcery and science has always been constant with each iteration. Conflicts between two philosophies, whether life needs to be extinguished or not, or whether magic has a place in a world that caves to greed because of it, makes for entertaining and profound dilemmas. If there's one other constant the series always has, is that age triumphs over experience. If you're in a Final Fantasy world and you're 30 and beyond, your mortality rate increases, otherwise you're fine pulling off death-defying acts of bravado. We believe that Japan's sensibilities and culture had a lot to do with this, from old writings of Yukio Mishima to even J-pop idols. Nonetheless, many people who started gaming within the late 80s and early 90s can relate just because of the main party's age, to give inspiration to young gamers that you can achieve so much at a ripe age. A typical Final Fantasy plot went from something as simple as time-traveling do-gooders righting a previous wrong, all the way to something chock-filled with allusions from real-life occurrences and scenarios. It's not apparent until you sieve through the many themes common in later FF games produced by current Square Enix producer Yoshinori Kitase. FF7's regular people relying on Shinra is just how corporations work in real life if pushed to extreme measures like hypercapitalism. FF10's fascination with death and religious autocracies is an updated take on the Danse Macabre philosophy mixed in with the troubles of mixing church and state in the Middle Ages. We may be reading too much into this, but the point is that these yarns weren't spun without care, research, and thought. Fans all over the world still remember good chunks of these stories because while it's all fiction, there are still bits of reality that people can look up deeply into. Be honest, you didn't bother looking up on the word Sephiroth before Final Fantasy VII, did you? Final Fantasy wasn't meant to be a sandbox-style game to begin with, but the illusion has always been there. You walk into a town, talk to random NPCs to get your quest, and exposition from people who matter, as well as fighting out some overpowered behemoth for bragging rights among your peers. I'm looking at you, Emerald Weapon. However, this part is getting narrower with each passing Final Fantasy. Exploration has been narrowed down to the point where you're just following a really obvious path, thanks to the developers' need to tell a story in the most direct way possible. As in the case of FF10 and 13, story and gameplay are separate in design, which really should not in the first place. It now didn't feel like your adventure where you name the main characters after yourselves and craft the path you wanted. In the older Final Fantasies, people loved to experiment with the job system in Final Fantasy 3 and 5, as well as find numerous ways to exploit Magicite and Materia combinations with FF6 and 7 respectively. The less said about how broken the draw and GF system was in FF8, the better. You can't fault Square Enix for introducing new and possibly convoluted battle mechanics, just to make semi-turn-based conflicts interesting and pulse-pounding. Another constant was determining party size. 3 seems to be the magic number for recent Final Fantasy titles after past efforts by series creator Hironobu Sakaguchi. Past fights accounted for up to 5 people just because they needed the manpower. I really doubt you can take down the likes of FF3's Ahriman and any of FF4's 4 Fiends of Terror with just 3 people. Western RPGs like Baldur's Gate prefer bigger teams going on adventures, but somehow a smaller party in the JRPG works just to give a sense of empowerment to the player. Last and not least, Final Fantasy games have always been about the tech showcases. Remember how you blew your load on Final Fantasy VII's opening? FF10's Zanarkand bass intro displayed what the PS2 was capable of. FF4 showed off some fancy spinning and scaling mode 7 effects on the Super Nintendo. While gameplay is always a priority, presentation can also make a huge difference in getting you, the player, invested in the thick of the narrative that traditional media cannot. Square Enix took advantage of that fact. So I ask you viewers, what do you think of the current changes the series has gone through with Final Fantasy 13 and 14? Do you wish for the old ways to be reborn anew? Tell us at the comments box below.